Decisions, questionable decisions by the Giants down the stretch. The run play on third down. Slayton taking it out of the end zone on the kickoff return. And then the Cardinals defense once again comes up big as they will run out the clock. Giants out of timeouts. Murray takes a knee. The Arizona Cardinals win a third straight game for the first time since 2015. Even their record at 3-3-1. Giants lose their third straight. They drop to 2-5.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy HP, and you're listening to the Unsportsmanlike Conduct Podcast, a podcast for the average Joe covering football and everything New York Giants. As I'm sure you can tell from the opening clip, unfortunately, the New York Giants have lost 3 straight games, losing in a Week 7 matchup against the Arizona Cardinals at home at MetLife Stadium. You know, this game, similarly to the other 3 losses, have been, really, really frustrating to watch because, there's talent on this team, but for some reason we're not going out there and executing. It's not like we don't have guys that can ball. We have talent, I think, all over the field. We may not have enough talent, but we do have enough playmakers to sort of prevent other teams from putting up as many points as they've been putting up on our defense. And from an offensive perspective, to be able to put enough points up because, quite frankly, I'm tired of us not being able to move the ball down the field and, not being able to break the 14-point or 17-point mark from an offensive perspective. And I know that the Giants put up 21 points in today's matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, but do remember that one of the points came on a blocked punt, in which the play before that, Marcus Golden and Lorenzo Carter were able to pin Kyle Murray back on a sack, which as a result, the punter was deep back into the end zone, and we were able to sort of push the offensive line on that play and block the punt, and fortunately enough, recover the ball in the end zone. That's not an offensive touchdown. That's a special teams touchdown. So today, we only scored 14 points. This offense is continuously showing that struggling, and it's struggled for the last 3 games. We've been an uncompetitive offense. Now, people want to complain about Pat Shurmur. Yeah, look, I think Pat Shurmur needs to let go of the play calling, because it's clearly evident that we cannot put up enough points on a week-in and week-out basis. And I'll be quite honest with you, when the score was 27-14, I thought the game was out of reach at that point. Because this offense, it's strange. This offense had its moments where they're driving the ball down the field, they were getting some first downs, but they couldn't protect Daniel Jones, and they couldn't block well enough to get to sort of push up the defensive line where Saquon Barkley was able to get long enough runs. And now, don't get me wrong, Saquon Barkley did finish with 4 yards per carry, but I just don't feel like he had enough impactful runs. He didn't have a lot of long runs, a lot of long gains. There was that one gain where he sort of brought us closer to the red zone, but that ended up resulting in a holding call, I believe, by Golden Tate, which ended up pushing us back another 10 yards on that holding play. But I actually do want to kind of go back to the stat line, because I do want to refer to Saquon Barkley's rushing game. So he had 18 carries for 72 yards, averaging 4 yards per carry. And it's quite strange because, look, 4 yards per carry, that's what you want your running backs to have. But I felt like that 72 yards that Barkley got on 18 carries, those were a hard 72 yards. I felt like and his longest run was a 20-yard run, so that means he essentially went 17 for 52 in his other 17 carries, which, if I do the math, I mean, that's not a good average. You do the math on that, and that's not a good average, and I think Pat Shurmur needs to find ways to, I don't know, he just needs to find ways to get Barkley involved more. Barkley also only had 3 receptions for 8 yards. You see other running backs like Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey, David Johnson. I know David Johnson obviously didn't play today, but then you see running backs like that, even James Conner, where they're utilizing their running backs who they know are elite pass catchers out of the backfield and having great games in the receiving game. Shurmur needs to find ways to get Barkley open, and so that he can be a dual threat running back, as we all know him to be. It just, I don't understand why Barkley can't break 20 rushing attempts. With the 17 rushing attempts and the 3 catches, Barkley only touched the ball 20 times. Barkley should be touching the ball in total 25 to 30 times a game. It's just very, very strange. I know the one play that a lot of people are upset about is that 3rd and 18. The 3rd and 18, I believe, was fourth quarter, and everyone knows that this is a situation where it's going to be, it's 4 down territory. Granted, we're still deep in our own territory, but it was still 4 down territory because we were down 27-14. But to call a draw play on a 3rd and 18, which results in, a couple of yards? I mean, it's really no excuse. And of course, you're going to find yourself in a situation where, it's 4th and 15 and Daniel Jones is going to obviously take a hit on a 4th and 15 because, look, when in down and distance situations, when you're that long from a first down, of course, the opposing defense is going to bring up pressure. And I want to talk about that pressure because the New York Giants offensive line was unable to protect Daniel Jones at all. Straight out the gate, Daniel Jones was getting killed. Daniel Jones got hit 12 times. How do you get hit 12 times? The offensive line made no adjustments. And don't get me wrong, there were a couple of plays here or there where the offensive line did a pretty decent job of holding up. And Daniel Jones was able to make some plays. But for the most part, it just looked like a shit show out there. I mean, Chandler Jones had a hell of a game. Of those 12 quarterbacks hits, Chandler Jones had 4 hits. He had a third of the quarterback hits, and then of the 8 sacks, Chandler Jones had 4 of those sacks. I mean, there was just no answer for him. There was no adjustments. There was no, maybe we can put Rhett Ellison in and maybe have him help block Chandler Jones. None of those adjustments were made throughout the game, and that's why Chandler Jones was in the backfield all day long. All day long. And, he caused I think he caused a fumble or two and even recovered one as well. And I am going to get about the fumbles that Daniel Jones is that Daniel Jones is having, given that I think he's fumbled the ball every single game that he started in the NFL so far in the last 5 games. I will get to that in a bit, but, this offensive line struggled. And also in key situations, key parts of the drive, and a lot of our penalties came from our offensive line and on drives where you can tell that the Giants are getting first downs, and it looks like we could potentially put ourselves in a field goal position and get 3 points. Because look, and I don't mean to digress here, but I don't care if we're not able to get touchdowns every single play, but at least every single drive, we should be able to put ourselves in a situation to get a field goal. Excuse me, I don't want to backtrack. I said what I mean to say is I understand that the New York Giants offense won't be getting a touchdown on every single drive. But my expectation is that our offense is competitive enough every single drive to take us near or in field goal range. Because by doing that, you can take time off the clock. You'll keep the opposing team's offense cold. But when you have a lot of these 3 and outs, or when you're giving up big plays on defense, when you're turning over the ball, or the quarterback's getting sacked, or Saquon Barkley's having these many 1 to 2 to 3 yard gains, those are plays that give the defense momentum, that gives the defense confidence. We didn't have enough big plays once again on the offense, and it's just one of those things where it's just frustrating to watch. Because you see players like Golden Tate and Evan Ingram and Darius Slayton and Saquon Barkley, and you step back and ask yourself, well, why aren't these guys making enough plays? Wayne Gallman was back after being out for two games from a concussion. I barely saw him on the screen. He didn't get not one carry, and he didn't get not one reception. So you have 2 running backs who are dual threat running backs on your roster who are being underutilized. Now let's go talk about the underutilization as well. So Golden Tate had a great game, and I think that was expected given that Sterling Shepard was out, so he ended up being our number 1 wide receiver. Tate had 6 receptions for 80 yards on 11 targets. But I think at times Daniel Jones sort of favored Golden Tate a little bit too much, and we saw that. We saw that with that interception in the first half. Tried to find Golden Tate, which was clearly on a double coverage, which was a very easy interception that left the Cardinals in a pretty decent field goal. Not field goal, but pretty decent field position. Just frustrating throws like that. Daniel Jones, Daniel Jones only played 5 NFL games. I understand he's going to make mistakes, but these mistakes he's been making every single week. Every time he throws an interception, I would argue that the interceptions are more on Daniel Jones than it is a good defensive play. I think he's making some poor throws, but I think he's good. I still think he's a good quarterback. Obviously, he's a young quarterback, and there's going to be growing pains as this Giants fans. But, if you're going to put a rookie quarterback in there and he's making these types of mistakes, I mean, something's got to change, right? Like, something has to change with the way he's making these decisions. Maybe that's on Mike Shula. Maybe Mike Shula needs to sort of sit him down and sort of figure out what he's seeing, because it's not changing. It's clearly not changing. I mean, maybe he's like misreading some of these defensive coverages. I also don't see Daniel Jones make a lot of adjustments at the line of scrimmage. And again, I'm not expecting him to do what Eli does, because Eli obviously is a veteran and he's been doing this for a long time. Daniel Jones has only played 5 NFL games. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's got to be things that he should be able to read. There's just way too many weapons on this offense for you to throw. For you to only throw for 6 yards per completion. For you to fumble it 2 to 3 times. For you to throw an interception. I mean, I think his touchdown interception ratio is negative. He's certainly thrown more interceptions than he has touchdowns. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's fumbled the ball almost as many times as he's thrown touchdowns. Daniel Jones had 3 fumbles today, lost 2 of them. I mean, one player on our team accounted for 3 of our turnovers. At some point, and I understand the defense didn't play that great, and that Chase Edmonds ran all over the field against them. But Daniel Jones you have to put the blame on him and the offensive line. Daniel Jones accounted for 3 turnovers. At some point, we have to stop trying to try to save Daniel Jones from all the criticism and criticize him like us New Yorkers are used to doing. I'm okay if a quarterback throws an interception or 2. But if you're going to throw the interceptions, or if you're going to lose a fumble, I expect you to come back and make up for it. And Daniel Jones has not made up for his turnovers. He's not doing that. There are plenty of quarterbacks who throw 2 to 3 interceptions a game, but can match, for each turnover they have, can match a touchdown with it. Daniel Jones has been unable to do that. He's thrown 1 touchdown today, 1 interception, 3 fumbles, 2 of those were for loss. And I kind of digressed a little bit, but I was talking about the wide receiver breakdown and the utilage of our team, because I think this completely goes on the blame of not only Pat Shurmur, but you also have to go to Mike Shula, because he's the offensive coordinator. And I understand that Mike Shula isn't the one that's calling the plays, but that whole staff is to blame for Benny Fowler having more catches than Evan Ingram and Darius Slay. And Evan Ingram had 1 reception for 6 yards, and I know he dropped one on a really wide open wheel route, but other than that, he had 1 reception on 5 targets. That 1 reception wasn't even a big completion. It was for 6 yards. Darius Slayton had 2 receptions for 28 yards on 2 targets. Why is it that Benny Fowler had more targets than Darius Slayton and has the same amount of targets as Evan Ingram? Benny Fowler had 4 receptions on 5 targets. Benny Fowler was not on the team until last week? And that was after the New England game, I believe. So I'm not even entirely sure when we picked up Benny Fowler again. But I believe it was after the New England game. So I'm sorry that I can't structure my sentences right now, but it's pretty frustrating to just see this type of utilization. Cody Latimer getting 5 targets. Why is Cody Latimer getting the same amount of targets as Evan Ingram? Or more than Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton, and what sort of bothers me is that Darius Slayton should be used to go deep. They're not using Darius Slayton well enough. Darius Slayton should be our flyer. Golden Tate, Evan Ingram should be the guys that are doing the out routes, the crossing routes, slants, and all that other stuff. I think the way they had Golden Tate run some routes and try to get him open was really, really good. But I think you kind of have to use that same approach for an even distribution. And a good distributions that are impactful. Distribution in that. Look, I'm looking at the stat line now. Daniel Jones threw to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different wide receivers. That's pretty good. You have 7. You have completions across 7 different wide receivers. That's a pretty good stat line. But now it's all about having impactful completions. Golden Tate was the only receiver that had more impactful receptions. I do want to give a credit to Benny Fowler and Cody Latimer because they did help us get some first downs. Also, Rhett Ellison with a big, huge touchdown that sort of helped the Giants get back in the game on a great dime by Daniel Jones, which was probably one of my favorite throws of the game from Daniel Jones. Other than that, I wasn't too thrilled with the rest of his passes because I thought every other pass was sort of a dink and dunk pass or passes to help Daniel Jones have easier completions, which is not a knock to him because that's what you want to do as an offensive coaching staff, right? It's to help your quarterback find the easy completions. But I just don't understand why Evan Ingram would only get 1 reception for 6 yards. Evan Ingram is one of the best tight ends in the NFL. You have to be able to draw up plays to get Evan Ingram open in space because once he catches the ball, he can get you yards after the catch, similarly to what a wide receiver can do for you. I mean, these are the types of things. These are the reasons why the New York Giants cannot put up points. This is why we've lost 5 games. We are 2-5, and to be quite frank with you, I don't see us winning against the Lions, and I don't see us winning against the Dallas Cowboys. I think we drop the next 2, and we're going to be a 2-7 team heading to the Jets, and maybe we have a fighter's chance against the New York Jets. Because I don't think I've been seeing some legitimate improvement from this New York Giants offense. The best offensive output that we've had was against the Buccaneers. But if you really want to think about it, against the Washington Redskins, we had a decent first half where we scored 17 points, but after that, we only scored 7 points. We didn't have the greatest offensive game in totality against the Washington Redskins. The only reason why we won that is because the Washington Redskins are probably one of the worst teams in the NFL at this moment. We were fortunate to have Dwayne Haskins come mid into the game and play horrible football and actually throw interceptions to the New York Giants. That's why we won that game. But then the game after that, we scored 10 points against the Vikings, 14 points against the New England Patriots. And which, by the way, one of those touchdowns against the New England Patriots came on a fumble recovery touchdown. So essentially, we only scored 1 touchdown against the New England Patriots, 1 offensive touchdown, that is. And then against the Arizona Cardinals, as everyone knows, we scored 21 points, in which one of those touchdowns came on a punt block return. Inexcusable. This offense has weapons. The New England Patriots game is the only game that's excusable because we didn't have Saquon, we didn't have Shepard, and we didn't have Ingram. That is the only game that's excusable to not be able to put up enough points. But every other game, we should have been able to break the 20-point mark, and we haven't. And to be honest with you, like, this team feels like it's better, but it's really not. We're 2-5, and to be honest, from an offensive standpoint, something needs to change, and it starts with the coaching staff. I'm not entirely sure what Pat Shurmur's doing, and look, we're not going to turn it around. We're not going to win 10 games, right? We're not going to go on this crazy winning streak where we win 8 in a row or whatever, or we win however many fucking games are left, 9 games in a row, and we end up being 11-5 and we make it to the playoffs. That's not going to happen. And the expectation wasn't that we were going to make it into the playoffs. My expectation heading to the season was that we were going to win enough games to remain competitive and that our football season was going to last long enough where we weren't mathematically out of it so early in the season. We're 2-5. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know where we go from now. But I think if this trend continues, they need to do something and figure out what they're going to do with Pat Shurmur. Because to have a head coach come back winning less than 5 games in 2 straight seasons, I mean, that's a red flag, even for Gettleman. I know Gettleman's done some pretty crazy things, some pretty crazy acquisitions, transactions, and some draft picks. But if you keep a head coach and he's not able to win 5 games a season, more than 5 games a season, then that's an issue. If we win with only 5 games, up to 5 games this year, Shermer's got to go. If we finish the season 5-11, Shermer's got to go. That whole coaching staff has to go. Because once again, from a defensive standpoint, this is another game where we give up more than 20 points to the opposing team's offense. And I'm just going to start from the top because this is how freaking pissed off I am. Okay? We give up 35 points to the Cowboys, 28 points to the Bills, 31 points to the Buccaneers. The one game that we do well is against the Washington Redskins, and we give up 3 points. But then after that, we give up 28 points to the Vikings, 35 to the Patriots. Even though the defense was competitive in that game, we still gave up 35 points, in which 2 touchdowns came on Tom Brady quarterback sneaks and goal line carries. And then we just gave up 27 points to the Arizona Cardinals. And while this New York Giants team has shown flashes of getting to the quarterback and generating some pass rush and getting quarterback hits, I rarely saw that today. There were moments here or there where we did get to Kyle Murray, but it wasn't impactful enough and it wasn't frequent enough. Just another. I think this is probably one of the more worst defensive outputs that we've had. I'm not entirely sure. Thankfully, we were able to contain the passing game. Kyle Murray didn't do much damage there, only threw for 104 yards. But it was unreal that we had trouble almost all game, or I would say for most of the game, getting to the quarterback. We had 1 quarterback hit and 2 sacks. There were way too many times where our interior linemen couldn't get enough push. We did have Golden, sometimes Marcus Golden, Lorenzo Carter getting off the edge. But, more times often than not, we couldn't get to Kyle Murray. And this offensive line isn't that good. So that was also a head-scratcher, given that we've performed better against better offensive linemen. And then Chase Edmonds, a backup running back, gets 27 carries for 126 yards and 3 touchdowns. And all of those 3 touchdowns came when he went untouched. It wasn't like he was breaking tackles left and right and, he was almost about to get brought down. He essentially took the carry, bursted right off the line, went untouched for touchdowns. Where are our linebackers making plays? And I know, whatever, we're 7 games in. But just thinking about it now, I don't even know what you would prioritize in the draft. Do you prioritize maybe another offensive line? Do you prioritize another wide receiver weapon? We clearly need a linebacker, but we also need an edge rusher. So what do? And we also definitely need to draft another safety because we don't have a cover safety out there. Why are both Antoine Bethea and Jabril Peppers playing so close in the box, guarding crossing routes and the running game? And that's a product of James Betcher using his staff incorrectly and not being able to use his linebackers correctly or identify linebackers in the draft that can take over this defense. The way you see Devin Bush doing that for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know. I'm just without reason or hope for the New York Giants at this point because over the last couple of weeks I haven't seen a gradual increase in the performance and I don't know. I'm just not entirely sure what lies ahead because I think we're going to drop the next couple of games and within a couple of weeks we'll probably be way out of playoff contention or even to make it to the playoffs. Honestly, at this point, I'm not even entirely sure why I'm even doing a podcast. I did this podcast because I love the New York Giants so much. I feel like I know this team well enough to critique them and analyze their games. And I really thought that, maybe the opening year of my podcast would be a good year for the New York Giants and a competitive year for the New York Giants. But, at this point, it does take a toll on you when you have to come in and always record an episode of how frustrated you are with the team. And, that's all I really have to say about this. Just another tough loss for the New York Giants. Again, I don't see us winning next week against the Detroit Lions. They're a tough team. Matt Stafford's going to have a field day against us. And if we can't get to that secondary on an offensive line against an offensive line that's much improved from year prior, then expect to give up maybe 350 pass yards. They have weapons all over the field. This is also just another team, unlike some of the other teams where we played. Look, when we played against the New England Patriots, they didn't even have all of their offensive weapons on the field. And they still managed to score 35 points. The Washington Redskins don't have enough offensive weapons in the first place. The Minnesota Vikings, we saw how much they were able to kill us, both in the pass game and the run game when their team was healthy. And similarly to the Minnesota Vikings, the Lions have a fully equipped wide receiver core. They have Marvin Jones. They have Kenny Golladay. They do have T.J. Hawkinson. They also have a good running game now with Kerryon Johnson. So I don't know, man. I think our defense is going to have a long day next weekend as well. And I think from an offense perspective, look, this Lions defense is a good defense. They have a pretty decent secondary. I know they gave up a lot of points to the Minnesota Vikings, but that Minnesota Vikings offense is a lethal offense, and we are nowhere near as good. We can't even drink the same water as the Minnesota Vikings offense, okay? So, I think even from an offensive perspective, I think they're going to be able to get to Daniel Jones because as of the last couple of weeks, dating back to the Minnesota Vikings game, Daniel Jones has been getting hit a lot. Maybe Sterling Shepard can come back from a concussion. Maybe he gets cleared from concussion protocol. Maybe that opens up things a little bit more for our offense. And, we can go from there. Because then this will be officially, I think, the first time that Daniel Jones has a complete set of offensive arsenal. And then if our team can't move the ball down the field and produce enough yards and points, then you got to throw the whole thing away. And Shermer's got to go. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, folks, that's about it. That wraps this episode up. Please, everyone, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm also on Instagram, so make sure you follow me on Instagram. That's _unsportsmanlike_conduct. I'm also on Twitter, so follow me on Twitter. That's _unsportsman. It's your boy HP. Until next time.